Hello, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of My Dog Will Eat My Face. I apologize for the last episode being rather brief because, as I'm sure you could tell by the sound of my voice in the episode, that I was hurting pretty good, and not in much of a position to provide a decent podcast, and was dealing heavily with health issues. This week, I wanted to dive in a little bit more detail as to what I've been dealing with, because it's actually ongoing, unfortunately. Things have not necessarily become any better for me, and frankly, seem to be on a downward course, needless to say. I've been warned about this coming by my doctors for quite some time now, and one of my biggest fears at the moment is that they were right. Because I was fighting the alleged downward spiral that they described pretty heavily. I was doing relatively well, especially considering I'm someone with end-stage heart failure. I was pretty proud of the fact that I was, in many senses, ignoring or not experiencing, to put it more accurately, the symptoms that they warned me about. But alas, all good things must come to an end, right? So, as I said in my last podcast, my very brief episode, I was dodged with the demons of a pretty bad condition. And unfortunately, it's not become much better. If anything, frankly, things have gotten worse, especially with respect to some particular symptoms that I wish to kind of go over this week. And I think I'm just going to start from there. Maybe discuss some of the things and thoughts that get me through these hard times. Time permitted, that might be subject for a whole other podcast. But we'll see if I can manage to share some of the things that keep me aloft in these really tiring times. But without further ado, allow me to get into the physical issues that I've been experiencing for a very prolonged period of time, and how they've been indeed worsening over that same time period. So, first of all, let me discuss the symptoms I've been experiencing as of late. I know last week I'd explained that I've been experiencing extreme fatigue, which had left me nothing but really bedridden for the course of several days at a time. That, unfortunately, has gone onward unchanged. I've been experiencing pretty much every weekend now a period of time in which I become incredibly immobile and completely bedridden, for lack of a better description. It's merely because I feel so exhausted, I simply can't even fathom getting out of bed for any prolonged period of time, except to, use the restroom or just to grab a bite to eat. But certainly, if I try to go any further than that, I become in dire need of returning to my bed. So, to put it briefly, that's remained unchanged. Last weekend, I once again could not get out of bed, hardly whatsoever. The only times I would get out of bed would be to get a bite of eat, as I said, or maybe get something so the dog's okay, and things of that nature. I would sometimes try to push myself to do a little bit more, but that ended very badly. So within the last week, I really tried to do more than just sleep. I tried more than to just be a bedridden bum, and it was often little things, I should say. And it wasn't like I was trying to redecorate the apartment, or I wasn't trying to move boxes around, or ready myself for the next Iron Man. No, there's nothing like that. Again, it would just be little things like getting a bite to eat, or taking care of the dog's basic needs, making sure he had water and food, and give him what little attention I could give him. So, I try to do that as much as I could since the last podcast. And I experienced such extreme fatigue that I was pretty much passing out wherever I may be at that moment. I would wake up on the floor, in my office chair, leaning heavily to one side on my office chair. And when I would do that, there'd also be strewn about my area, my telephone and my eyeglasses and my computer mouse. You know, it was just like I went completely limp and dropped everything around me and passed out because I wasn't listening to my body and going to sleep because I was trying to do more than just sleep. I was really pushing myself to do more than just sleep all weekend, and every time I tried that, my body really punished me. It really forced itself to shut down my body wherever I may be. I'd even wake up on the hard floor, on hardwood, like I just passed out right there and then. One time I woke up perpendicular entirely to my bed, like I could just reverse collapsed on it. And frankly, in all kinds of different positions. So I wasn't listening to my body and finally giving in and going to rest like I should have. And because of that, it really left me in a really lousy situation of, like I said, passing out in strange positions, which often led to really bad back pain, as you can imagine, being stuck on the floor or on an armrest for several hours while you were sleeping. It doesn't create for a very pleasant feeling when you wake up and peel yourself out of that horrible position you're in. So, the body's been very unforgiving with respect to that. If anything, since the last recording, it's become worse. And I don't know when or if that will ever stop, frankly. Because in addition to that, there have been a few other thresholds that I crossed that really worry me, so to speak. those are the thresholds that have to do with essentially potential hallucinations, which I've had prior to this point, but not of such severity. And I want to break away for a segment to discuss what's been going on with respect to that, because frankly, that whole topic deserves its own segment. So, with respect to what I've been dealing with physiologically and mentally, it's been probably some of the hardest moments of my life, to be blunt. In short, I've been pretty much victim of totally losing my mind. And that was unfortunately the most recent symptoms I experienced because, again, I was trying so hard to fight the demand my body was making to return to sleep. Because if I had, I'd have literally nothing to show for my day. Maybe I'd be up for 10 minutes, and then immediately my body was saying it's time to go back to bed. So I fought that still tooth and nail, which was stupid. My doctors warned me not to fight it, but just call me human. I really wanted to have more to show for my day than just laying around in bed. But anyway, let me get back to the psychological effect. I've been fighting the urge to sleep quite a bit, and that very recently led to a full-blown psychotic episode. I know I'm prone to these because of the kidney failure, and when you're facing severely damaged kidneys like I am, there's the propensity to where the kidneys don't appropriately filter the blood out of the brain. Excuse me, not the blood. What am I saying? The toxins out of the brain. Well, filter the blood, same thing, right? It's filtering blood flow. But your kidneys are not filtering out and removing the toxins that have built up in the brain, which is what your body does when you sleep. It's one of the reasons why sleep is so essential. So to all of you insomniacs, put that in your quiver of things to worry about and keep you up at night. It's a true reason as to why sleep is so important, that it gives the body an opportunity to remove those toxins. When, if not removed, it can actually result in a psychotic state. And that's what happened to me just recently. Because I had not been sleeping, and I've been fighting my body's command to sleep pretty much nonstop and return to the bed, that I entered into a full-blown psychotic episode. And it's hard to explain. I get a weird, funny feeling. It's like I enter a dream state, and I'm somewhat aware of it. I became extremely terrified, had a strong sense of doom around me as it was occurring. I was begging to talk to someone just to tell me I'm going to be okay, and that was hard to come by. You know, my support network is apparently not as good as I thought, because I basically had to corner people to get them to even acknowledge that I was having an issue. At least that's how I felt. But once I called the right people in my family, they helped me a lot to make sure I'm not losing my mind entirely. But yeah, it was a strong underlying feeling that I was simply losing my mind. It made me very scared and uneasy, and led to full-on hallucinations. Pretty much, if I just closed my eyes for a bit, I would hear and see things like visions instantly, like I was watching a movie. Also, at about this time, I fell twice. Not once, twice. I was trying to play with the dog while I was sitting in my chair, and I fell completely out of the chair to the floor, just braced myself with my arms, thankfully, so I didn't face plop. Then, another time, I very nearly fell again, but just barely managed to, well, I did fall again fully, I should say, but managed to land my body onto a soft surface, which saved me from any serious injury. So I had reached the point to where I was hallucinating, and I was exhausted, and I was now periodically collapsing. It was at that point when I gave in and decided to sleep. And when I did, I was out like a light, and I slept for the whole rest of the day and the whole following night, and well into the next morning. When I woke up, I felt better. I definitely felt better. But I'm scared to guess how long that's going to last. I really am, because it hit me so quickly and scared the death out of me, honestly. Just the fear that came with it. Even if it was a rational fear, it was just in and of itself a nightmare. And I certainly don't want that to happen again, but being the realist that I am, I'm almost certain it will happen again. So, yeah, I was facing not only these terrible physical ailments, but a full-on psychotic episode and mental breakdown. And the worst part of the mental breakdown is I don't remember 99% of it. When I say it's like a dream state, I really mean that. It's like I'm having a terrible nightmare, and I wake up and I can't quite remember the nightmare. You know that feeling when you have a dream and then you get up and like, oh, that was a wild dream, and then as soon as you try to recall it, you can't remember it? That's exactly like what these experiences are like. They feel very much that way. That I cannot recall the psychosis while it's happening. So it's extremely difficult to deal with, and I would never recommend it for anyone. But apparently this is now a cruel, nasty component to this disease that I'm still fighting. So what do the experts say about all this? I've obviously talked to my nurse about this. I've obviously talked to my healthcare providers about these issues. And the brief summary of what they returned to me is that it is to be expected as my congestive heart failure and oncoming death progress. So that just filled my heart with warm tickles. No, but really, that is pretty much what they said, that it's to be expected with my disease, and it is a perfectly well-known component to someone fighting for their life in hospice. And that really goes for someone whose everyday existence is like the equivalent of trying to climb Mount Everest. And frankly, before all this occurred, I was doing more than that. I was really pushing myself. I had a lot of heavy cleaning to do. My next door neighbor's apartment got flooded with the fire suppressant sprinklers, destroying their unit, so they're doing full-on construction next door. And they also had to take out some of the ceiling in parts of my apartment that got flooded with water. So I've been dealing with construction workers all day, no ability to nap, and yeah, it was just kind of a perfect environment where I really was in no position to get extra sleep. And on top of that, I was truly, honestly trying to fight it because I still want to live some of my life. I still want to experience things. I still wanted to be awake to some extent to live. And the response I got from my body was, "Oh, no, you don't." And it just slammed me to the ground and kicked my butt and forced me to do what it says. So I think without a doubt that's my new reality. I can't ever ignore my body, especially when it comes to fatigue. I have to listen to it and sleep, no matter how obnoxious it might be. No matter what time it might be. That's the other thing. I've had these waves, before all this, I had these waves of sleepiness at like 5 p.m., which is in my mind like the worst time to take a nap. Because if it's a long nap, I'll wake up at 8 p.m. and I'm not going to be up all night. But now I've come to learn it doesn't matter when it hits. If it's at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., that's the time it is to take a nap. Otherwise, having insomnia is going to be the least of my concerns. Facing a total and utter psychological breakdown is more of an issue. And yeah, the breakdown itself was just totally surreal. And as I try to recall it today, after the fact, obviously, I can't remember most of it. I remember reaching out to people to talk to me because I was experiencing extreme fear. I was just terrified of what was happening to me. I couldn't find anyone to talk to me. I do remember that. But I can't remember who all I called, what I said, who I talked to, or what. I'm terrified to look at my phone log. I'm not kidding. I've honestly refused to look at my phone log since then for fear of what I might see. It's like drunk calling. You know, when back in the day, maybe, at least for me, I admit it, I'd get hammered, and I'd sometimes in a blue moon drunk call someone. By in a blue moon, usually like once a weekend. Anyway, but I think most of us have that experience of drunk calling someone or something like that, where you don't remember what you said. You know you said something, and you're terrified to find out what the hell it is you said. Because the more you hear, the more you just want to bury yourself into your hands until you die. So I've not really bothered asking people what I said, looking at my chat histories or my phone call histories. I'm just like, I don't know what it was. I have no recollection of 99% of it, and I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to know everything that I said. I don't know how much of an ass I made of myself. And so I've sort of avoided that. But yeah, I think the risk of a psychotic break is absolutely my new reality. It's shown itself. And that I can no longer delay sleep when I'm sleepy. I can't postpone it. I can't try to stay up. Because if I do that, it causes really bad things. Both physically and mentally. And so I think that is absolutely my new reality. And you know what? I think I've said that even in previous podcasts on this same topic. But what can I say? I'm a hard learner. I'm a very hard learner. So, with all that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this week's podcast because obviously I have to save my strength, to be perfectly blunt. I don't know how that's going to translate into so many things in my life. The podcast, my cooking, other hobbies I might have, I really don't know. My biggest fear is becoming bedridden entirely. And it seems like I'm just a quick jaunt away from that fact. And that really does scare me quite a bit, to be blunt. I'm actually terrified that this is the best I get to look forward to. And to just do the things that I love, including the newfound things that I love after being sequestered to just existing in my apartment until I die. It just absolutely terrifies me that I'm not going to even be able to do those little things I've found since being pretty much blocked at home. It does sadden me quite a bit. But I'm also very depressed about it with the fact that obviously my body's getting worse. It's obviously exhibiting all the ill symptoms, up to and including short-term insanity, for lack of a better word. So, unfortunately, I have that to live with as of right now. And again, referring back to the professionals, they all say it's to be expected and it's only going to continue and get worse. It's not going to get better. And I'm haunted with the words that my nurse once said to me. She said, based on her experience, people in her care, I should say, become limited to their bed as a first step. And then as a second step, they end up dying from their disease because there's nothing for them to do and enjoy anymore. So, I hope she's wrong, like Nostradamus. I hope it's as lame as a Nostradamus prediction. But she did say in her experience, that's what she notices at first. There goes the legs, and then they become stuck in bed, and then they die. In fact, that's almost verbatim of how she put it. I might be off by one word or two, but that's how she worded it. First, they lose their legs, and they become bedridden, and then they die. So, I hope I haven't crossed that Rubicon, but it may very well be that I very well just have. But anyway, with all that being said, I'll keep in touch as best as I can. I can't make promises, but I'll try to keep live on the stream as much as possible. And thank you very much for tuning in and listening to my plight and allowing me to have a voice to share what it's like to be going through this. It is truly a living hell. I'm not going to lie about that. Going through this slow, horrible death via heart failure is a living hell. And I would not wish it on my worst enemies. So thank you, dear listener, so much for allowing me to have a voice in this world and to talk to you and giving me just a brief moment of your time to express what I'm going through and what it's like. I appreciate it fully and can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. Now, I have to remind you to be sure to follow the podcast and turn on notifications so you're told when a new podcast comes out. I still have so many friends and acquaintances I have to chase down and remind them that a new podcast is out. And they all say, oh, I haven't turned on notifications. Turn on notifications. If you don't mind, it might be one of my last podcasts. Not to be morbid. Let's face it, the whole damn podcast is morbid. Anyway, if you really want to support the podcast, though, you could always go to patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface and just drop a shekel for me, as I will certainly need it, being on full-on disability, a reduced income, increased expenses, and trying to stay alive through these days. But if you've already listened this far as a loyal listener, you've already done the best thing I can ask of you, and that is to just listen to my words. I truly, truly appreciate it, and I truly mean it when I say that. That's the best thing you could possibly do, is just to lend me your ears, as someone with my same initials once said. Allowing me to have a voice and to organize my thoughts and emotions with these changes and challenges in my life is doing more for me than you could possibly imagine. So, again, just for being a listener and being there and allowing me some sort of platform to share my words is more than I could ever ask for, and I thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart. So, with all that being said, I'm going to say that's it for this week. I'll plan to be in touch next week. Hopefully, I'll have a little bit more content. But I have to see how I'm feeling, of course, so be forewarned. I'm really at the mercy of my body these days, and I have no control when it's going to decide it's time to sleep and do nothing else. So for now, all I can say is, auf Wiedersehen, and I hope to be in touch with you again very soon.